are you?
Good. And hello to everyone else out there. This is Mind, Money, and Muscle, a series of discussions about being mentally, financially, and physically resilient. And my name is Aaron Filipi. I'm a good friend of Cody Fowler, founder of Fowler Financial. And I am super excited about this discussion because it's gardening related. Are you ready for this, Cody?
Yeah, one of my favorite subjects.
Excellent. Okay, so on that, good segue. Uh, when did you get into gardening? Just introduced us to how this all got started, your love of gardening, because you put a lot of content out there on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. How did this all start?
Gardening, to me, I think probably when I look back on my life, the earliest time that I can think about gardening was what I had a science project actually. And I'm actually I've never really told this before. I'm just thinking of this right now, but I was examining centrifugal force on a record as a science project. And I wanted to see how a seed and the roots would grow, if they would grow differently, if over the course of growing on a record player, how that would affect the roots. So kind of an epiphany for me here that dates back to probably like, I don't know, 7 years old. But for me, in more current day terms, gardening has been one of those places where you generally do it alone. You're generally going into silence. And, if you compare what you would do in a garden to what you would do in an office with other people and phones ringing and emails coming in and your phone, text message, alarm chiming at you. This to me is a time to kind of get my head straight. For me to be more in control of my mind than my mind being in control of me. A big part of the last, I'd say 3-4 years for me, especially with a big emphasis on personal development, was what's the role of the mind, right? It's why I've studied a lot of folks like Michael Singer, the author of The Surrender Experiment and The Untethered Soul, that inner voice. And the inner voice is really important, right? How the subconscious mind over the course of your lifetime and all the experiences, what it tells you, how you feel about yourself, whether it's your confidence, your self-esteem, all of these things, you don't really kind of get in tune with all of that and have, the opportunity to look at your consciousness, right? Your awareness. It's like Eckhart Tolle would talk about, being in the moment, in the now. What better place than in a garden where, you're just kind of in touch with the earth, with the soil, with the dirt. You're seeing growth. You're caring for things. You're going beyond yourself. I mean, to me, that's kind of my relationship, how I would describe it with gardening. I mean, there's a lot more to it in terms of everything that goes on with, storms. I mean, there's so many analogies that I can think of with nature. It's like, wind, for example. I haven't met many people that would say, oh, I just love a windy day, where things are getting blown around and leaves are falling off the trees. But the reality is wind, that resistance, that's actually what causes a tree to be stronger. The roots from the disruption, they grow deeper and sink into the ground more. That's why when they looked at the biosphere experiments with trees, they said, oh, they've got the perfect oxygen and perfect air, perfect water, perfect environment to grow. But then they grew a certain amount and then they toppled over because they didn't have the resistance in the wind to that sort of adversity to create a stronger tree. So there's a lot that's going on in the garden.
Okay, so clearly you know a lot about this, but I want to make sure everyone understands. You have a project going on right now, right? And could you describe what's going on right now and the role gardening and landscaping plays, and your role, because you didn't just hire all this out, right? So you're playing a pretty significant role in. We're not talking about Cody Fowler, chief of the raised, 6 by 10 foot garden. We're talking about landscaping and gardening on a different scale. Can you describe that a little bit? Set some context.
Yeah. It is pretty neat. I feel very blessed to have the opportunity that we've got in front of us. But we acquired about 7 acres of land that's surrounded by a few mountain ranges, and we're building a ranch. And early on, just like immediately when we bought the land, I started trimming the trees out there in the desert. I had these big boots, and because we've got rattlesnakes out there, and it was 110 degrees, and this was the summertime. I was lugging 5-gallon bottles of water out there and building little moats around the trees, mesquites primarily, and stepping over, different types of cactus, cholla, and a lot of saguaros and prickly pear. So it's a kind of a rough environment out there, but I just wanted to see this transition of the land. And as we built this ranch, I wanted to, when we moved in, have a mature landscape. And I just found that it's a massive undertaking, but in a lot of time, it's, especially during the summer months when it's 100+ degrees, you've got to water in the morning, you got to water at night, and before you have water out there, you either lug it out there, or in my case, I lugged it and I borrowed the neighbor's hose for about 6 months until we drilled a well 700 feet down and then got well water. But it's a tremendous amount. It would be easy for somebody that didn't understand my motivation to say, okay, you're a finance guy, you're a real estate guy, you're a debt guy. What are you doing spending all this time landscaping? You could hire somebody for that, right? Or you could put an irrigation system in, which we have now that we've got electricity, we've got power. And so we've put all the spaghetti tubes and the micro tubes and the headers and all of that underground. So now I attach a hose to a stub out, and I also water. But there's so much that goes on mentally for me during this time. I'm solving problems. It's just like meditation. Meditation takes on a lot of different forms. Sometimes it's total silence. Sometimes it's mantras. Sometimes it's focused on breathing, following the breath. Sometimes it's guided. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's walking. Sometimes there's some exercise involved. For me, the meditative part of this is that it's me with me thinking about my thinking. And people just don't tend to do that. They don't tend to take a moment, slow down, think about their thinking. I'm asking questions as well, not necessarily out loud, but it's like I learned from Deepak Chopra, who am I? What do I want? What am I grateful for? Who wants to know? All questions that are very worthwhile to ask. But if what you did was wake up and get into your email and start your day and start making phone calls, and then you're traveling and you're coming home, and if you have kids, and there's really no time in the day for this self-reflection that, in my view, makes you much more equipped to think about what's important and to lead a more intentional life. I'll say that again, to lead a more intentional life, because that's really what this is about. So that time is not wasted at all. It's actually serving me very well.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so tell me about a time recently when you were kind of inspired. You just felt present. You're talking a lot about being present. Is there a time in the last week or two where you felt especially present or inspired or peaceful?
Yeah, well, this is, I'll tell you about something that just happened 6 hours ago. I was walking my daughter, 5 years old, up the stairs. she wanted to go upstairs, and she asked me if I would walk with her. And I said, well, why don't we hold hands? And I was telling Elisa this. I said, I just had this vision of our 5-year-old, of me walking her down the aisle. And you almost get like, emotional and choked up about the idea that you hear it all the time, that the time flies and they grow up so fast and this and that, but it's true. And so I really like to stop and slow down and think about those moments and not just let it pass. I mean, that's why I talked to my wife about it, and it's why we're talking about it right now. Is it's meaningful to me. Is I think that what I do in the garden and meditation in general, and just kind of thinking about what's important to me, you start to pick up those moments as opposed to just being totally fleeting, right? Because that moment we could have just been walking up the stairs. I could have been thinking about something else, but I was thinking about how much I need to treasure that moment, and I'd like a lot more of those moments. And that's why I do what I do with the self-care, with the inner work. It's not because I think there's still today a stigma associated with like self-development, self-help. So it's the idea like, oh my goodness, like there must be something wrong with you. Well, we're just trying to like be happy and have more happy moments along the way. I think Michael Singer just does a phenomenal job of serving that message up, because he very eloquently talks about why people do the things that they do, and that's kind of the striver's curse, right? Is like you want to achieve, and then the horizon is that bullseye is always moving, the target's always moving, and so you're always trying to get there. And 50 years later, you're still here, and it's still there. And he says, well, wouldn't it be easier if you just worked on the inner part, and you realize that all you're looking to do is be happy, and it's not all these things that you're trying to accomplish that are going to make you happy, right? It's not the house, it's not the fancy car or the boat or whatever. That resonates with me a lot, because if you look at psychometric testing, I think there's a lot of value in that, in understanding whether it's your unconscious motivators, or whether it's with print, or if it's DISC or Myers-Briggs, sorry. Any of these tests, you begin to learn more about yourself. And for me, I've always scored high on like achievement, results, and whatnot. And so, kind of having an understanding of that, I think is helpful. I mean, this morning I was doing some affirmations this morning, and this was from something that maybe the 4th or 5th day of Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins. I wrote this down, and it's in my phone, and it pops up every morning. And it's supposed to be a trigger. But one of the things that I wrote was that I, Cody, see, feel, think, and hear that the ultimate purpose of my life is to be spiritually aware and enjoy the journey on the way to my fullest potential. And the fullest potential of my loved ones is important as well. What that's about is the scarcity mindset that I think is so pervasive with so many people, not having enough, not being enough, right? If that's how you live your day, you wake up and you're worried about this and that. I mean, I still on a daily basis push past all of that. So it's not that I don't have those feelings. I just don't, they may come and I don't entertain them. And that's the value of this mindfulness I'll tell you, just the other day, I had this overwhelming sensation of peacefulness around everything being okay, regardless of what was thrown at me. And that's an interesting thought. And I wanted to just, for lack of a better term, lock that in. In that moment, I thought, no matter what happens in this business, no matter what happens in this industry, no matter what's thrown at me, I've got the skills, the ability, the confidence, the determination to move through it and to be just fine. Because that, I mean, it seems oversimplified to say that peace of mind and being carefree is a fantastic sensation for somebody to have. But the reality is, most people do live with this low grade anxiety and fear about what's to come. I've been there. I've been there for a lot of my life. And so I love being on that journey, chipping away at that to say, no, that's not, I want to go about my days living carefree and lighthearted, knowing all is well. I mean, that's actually a mantra that's in a meditation that I listen to probably 3-4 times a week with Deepak Chopra. So that was a long way of saying what the garden kind of creates as an environment for me, because that's what I want to live in. Those are the emotions that I want to have in my life. It's a good place to be. And the thing is, you know, one might not have a garden, but you know, I think you can create a space regardless of your environment that is kind of your go-to, same time, same place. And it's where you have some ritual of some kind. So just to make it more universal, I think that's really key. It's, you know, if you look at, you know, Charles Duhigg and you know, The Power of Habit, or any book on habits, you know, you've got the trigger, you've got to set this up. You have to be intentional about it, right? And then you've got the routine, and then you've got the reward. That's the habit loop. But setting yourself up with some sort of a trigger, so that it doesn't just sound like a nice idea, because that let's be real, right? It's not information that people need. It's really the system. Like, you know, telling somebody that they should eat healthy and they should exercise is like, well, no shit, right? But how do you actually implement that with everything else that's going on in your life? And that's really, I think what I have sought out is, what's a system that works for me? Because it's not universal. What works for you? Get to it, get some momentum, stick with it. And that's like how Jim Rohn described what is confidence. He said confidence is not neglecting the things that you should do on a daily basis. When you don't neglect that, when you do those little things, you build confidence. And that to me is really where it's at.
Okay, got it. Going back to gardening, just last thing, just a fundamental here. Do you listen to music when you're trying to be so present?
Great question. I actually, it kind of depends on the mood, because there are some times where being in the garden, and it could be early morning and the birds might be chirping, and you know, I mean, this morning a bunny was running through, and there was a snake in the tree. It was totally engaged with everything, seeing and hearing everything, and that was really nice for me. And then there were other times where, you know, I might be digging a hole, I might be swinging a pickaxe and getting a, you know, serious workout in, and I might be listening to some hard rock. So it's totally dependent upon the situation. More often than not, I think being in nature, sometimes hearing the wind, or you know, really just kind of taking in all the senses. Maybe, you know, maybe some rain is coming from the monsoons and you're really smelling it. You know, those types of the engagement of the senses. Sometimes that's better with nothing on. Sometimes I'm actually listening to an audiobook. You know, I might be listening to something on YouTube that's inspirational. So that's, you know, as Tony Robbins calls it, no extra time, or net time. That's a great time to learn more. I mean, it's just like being in a car. You know, you have a commute. No, you don't always need to listen to the same song that you've heard 100 times. Nothing wrong with that. I love jamming out to music, but it is also a great time to absorb something that is feeding the mind, right? It's no different than feeding the body. The body nutrients, you mind nutrients. So a little bit of both.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it, because you're talking so much about being present. And sometimes I struggle with that, whether I should be listening to music, which is basically entertainment, or whether or not I should be listening to just the surrounding, just taking it in, because I'm not really being present. I feel like I'm not being present. So I appreciate you elaborating on that a little bit. We could talk about mind stuff for a long time. I mean, this is all very, very good stuff. It's basically enriching the human spirit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate your time, Cody. We probably should cut it off at that point. Otherwise, we'll just keep on going. And I appreciate everyone else's time out there. Certainly check out more insights on fallerfinancial.com, and related to gardening and anything related to the project that Cody was referring to. There's a lot of content being put on Facebook and on Instagram and on LinkedIn as well. So check out those resources, Faller Financial. If you have, and by all means, if you have a note to sell, check out fallerfinancial.com/contact. Inform everyone about that. And until next time, be good to your mind, your money, and your muscles.